Hello, I'm David Judy, planner and organizer of this event, Trailer at the BOC, which was staged last Saturday on the 28th of February. The plan in this recording is to provide an opportunity for my Ian, who was the winner of the elite, through some of the issues he found the controls that I'd planned, and to give you, I hope, an opportunity to learn from the planning aspects and also from the competitors' point of view what they found. Can I just double check, Ian? Are you still able to hear me and join this session?
Yes, I am. And I've put the start guide on for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And congratulations on your win
Thank you. It's a lot easier when people don't turn
on
up.
Saturday. That's a series of images which are going to be like this, which show the viewing point position and the kites that are visible from that viewing point. As you can see, I hope there is a picture of them, an image of the map, an extract of it alongside, as well as the control description. There were two courses available on Saturday. Firstly, the elite, which is the one that Ian won. There was a shorter A course. Now, we'll be going through mainly the elite, but as most or nearly all of the controls were shared in some way, we will be also just mentioning the A course as we go through. So this was the viewing point. Before I hand over to Ian, I will just go to the next slide, which shows a closer view of it, showing the two kites, but also to the next one, which shows the view from round the corner. So the competitors started at the triangle, and the viewing point for elite control 1 was on the bridge. But by walking around the path and coming to this point, you got a much better view of across the river to the kites. But you'll also see that a third kite became available, which was actually one which was being used for the A course, which had the description here: A to C, Alpha to Charlie, re-entrant. And that was the correct answer for the A course, the re-entrant next to the boulders here, which is that little kink in the contour there. Anyway, Ian, what would you like to say about this?
Can you go back to the viewing point picture, please, David? Can you go back to the picture from the viewing point, please,
Sorry,
David?
no, I missed what you said.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I'm at it now.
Yes. Okay. So looking at this problem, um, the control circle is on a side of a pond. The kite A is clearly nowhere near the side of the pond on the map, so we're not really considering kite A. It's just B, and whether it's B or zero. Now, looking on the map, there is a knoll on the edge of the circle, which was sort of an attack point for this, which David has quite cunningly hidden behind the tree from the viewing point, although you can just see the edge of it if I can highlight it here. I think it's this knoll here. Yes. So if you now switch to the viewpoint from the other side of the river, we now have the view of the knoll. I'm just trying to highlight that, but everything's going very slowly. This is the knoll here. Now, it's quite hard on these photographs to really judge the distance, but this point, it was good enough for me that the Bravo kite was to the left of the knoll and it was down a bit, which sort of suggested it was pondy. And after rather more minutes than I've spent in this call, I went for the Bravo, which I believe was the right answer. David.
Going to Elite 2, I'll just point out that the A course had their second control looking at this path junction. That's the A number 2. This is moving on to the elite 2.
Do we think we're able to talk about task 2 without photos, or we're just going to have to pause?
Well, I'll talk about task 2 and hopefully the photo will appear whilst David's frantically working. So task 2, the viewing point is here. You're looking out to a kite, a single kite, which is apparently on the end of a path, but not entirely clear where that path was. The A course were allowed to go down here and up this path, and they actually had this problem too, but they could view it by standing here and looking down the path, which made it a bit easier for them. For me, I was looking for the two white forests, which in this sort of terrain is just there's a lot of trees, some of which have been knocked down, and I wasn't entirely sure at this point whether the trees that have been cut down were part of the white or not. Yes, certainly as you walk down this path, you could see that this end of the path, so you knew how far away it was, and that gave me a bit more confidence that it was the right distance away from where I was standing. Looking at the two bits of white forest, it's pretty clear I was looking in the right direction. And I think other people even walked back down the path here to have another look through at it, although I find it quite difficult to see the kite from up here. Well, I think 3 and 4 probably depend on the photos. 5 was a more interesting one. The viewing point for 5 is over here, if you could see it over to the east, and which is frankly the worst place to try and solve 5 from. But then that's one of the things a Trello planner does to you. It is clearly that the choices between this Alpha and this Bravo kites, it's clearly not the Bravo kite. So again, you're only choosing between Alpha and 0. What I did is I went back to the bridge, looked down the center line of the bridge, and there was no kite there, which is a good hint that it's in the wrong place. I then came back down to number 5, looked through almost a bit of a line up from this thicket through the Bravo kite, which went exactly to where the circle is. Can I draw that as a line? Yeah, this sort of line up. Goes to the center of the circle, and there was no kite there. And after a few minutes of that, I'm pretty sure that it's the Alpha kite is not in the right place. So having chosen between Alpha and 0, it must be 0.
If you went to the bridge and looked about 2 feet to the left of the bridge, line of the bridge, you could see a kite.
Yes. Given that this is mapping and the bridge is mapped much wider than it is in real life, the only sensible line you've really got from the bridge is the one straight down the middle of it.
That's fair, yeah.
The middle is mapped in the right place, but the edges are much wider than in real life. I think though that bridge as mapped is over 4 meters wide, or over 3 meters wide on a 3000 map, whereas it was only about 1 meter wide in real life.
Good point. Yeah. Hadn't thought of that.
Right, I have images from David. So let us look at number 3 and 4.
Yeah.
This is looking across the water from around about here at 3 and 4. There are 3 kites, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. If we look at number 3 first, the way I was solving this was here. Well, this grey is this building here. Actually, I've got the annotation now. So the grey here is the building here. So I'm going to the left of that. You can't see it here, but this tree, which I've highlighted, is clear behind and much clearer if you walk to the right down the path a bit. And after that, it's a matter of tracing through this contour, which I believe corresponds to something like this on the ground, and you eventually reach the Charlie kite. That was my solution to this problem. Looking at problem number 4, which is sort of a continuation of this, the contour comes round, and there is a tree which corresponds to this tree here. And then it's very hard to see from this angle because also there's some grot on the ground here, but the rest of the contour carries on back. And here you enter this sort of debate as, is the kite exactly on the corner of the re-entrance here, or is it forward a bit, or is it to the right a bit? Moving up and down the path gave you more views of it, although some of them were obscured by vegetation. So, for example, standing here, you were obscured by this tree and the bush around this tree. And as you got further down, there were more things obscuring it. It took a little while for me because it didn't look exactly right, but it didn't look exactly wrong either. And one of the first things Tom Dobber ever said to me in trail orienteering is, unless you've got a really good reason for it to be a 0, then it's probably a kite. And at this point, I couldn't find a really good reason for it to be a 0. So I went for kite. David.
In addition, Ian, as you've shown on there, it would be halfway from the spur to the trees.
Yes.
And if there's anything other than that, that would be a reason to be 0. But it wasn't anything terribly wrong like that.
No, it's hard to see on this photograph.
Point of order, my lord.
Yes.
It's a form line, not a contour.
Yes, you are correct, of course. So to take everything I've said, edit contour and replace with form line, and it's still the same. So here is number 6. This is a problem on a stream. We're looking from a viewing point down here, roughly. You could walk up and down and had a reasonably good view of both the kites, although there was an alpha course kite. I think it was here, was it, David?
Correct. If you can bring up the next, it will be on the later slide to show you. But yes, it was to the left of the alpha kite, so it was on the next stream bend along to the left. Yes, the viewing point on the A course for number 5 was at the stream end down at the bottom where it crosses the path. So the A course came along the path that runs sort of from right to left. Yeah. So we're looking from the path up the stream, or in fact it's down the stream to, in this case, the Bravo kite is correct. So that's in the right position. The A kite that you saw was the A kite.
So the A course was viewing down here, and the elite course was viewing up here. And there was a kite here, which you couldn't see from the viewing point on the elite course. And then looking down here, the A course couldn't see the Charlie, what was the Bravo kite on the elite course. It became all a bit complicated because as I walked up and down the path, you could start seeing different kites. So sometimes you could always see 2 kites, but it wasn't always the same 2 kites because the A course kites were coming in to confuse things. Now, if I go back to the original picture, then you see the alpha kite, Bravo kite. Solving this was a bit of a trickery. I walked all the way down to the bridge here to have a look down, and there it was quite clear. You could see the bend in the stream here, and you could see the bend back again, which is where the kite is. I don't suppose we've got a picture of that, but that was the key to most of the solving of this problem. There was also looking up the side of this line of forest, which sort of corresponds to roughly down here. Correct me if I'm wrong, David.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
that's
And
appropriate.
if I remember correctly, the correct answer was Bravo, wasn't it? So outside of the forest.
No, the correct answer was, he just says, double checking 6. It was Alpha.
Okay, take back what I said. The line of the forest
Yeah.
is more like this then. I'm having a bit of trouble driving the tech and talking at the same time. It was the same when I was giving lectures. Anything else you
Ian.
want to say about that problem, David?
No, I liked the fact that as you walked along, you saw different kites, and I think that was like the Elite One, the first control, where you came round the corner and then you looked across the river and you saw 3 kites, where at the viewing point you only saw 2. It just added an extra dimension to the issue, the problem. But no, I think that covers it.
Right. Just talk for another 30 seconds, please. So 7, 8, 9 were a cluster together. They were essentially 3 alpha-only problems from the same viewing point. So my first thought here was not to answer it alpha when the answer could be Bravo or Charlie, which is a mistake I've made many times in the past. Here is the alpha kite. Here's the Bravo kite. And here's the Charlie kite. So looking at problem number 7, now this was a lot of debate about this one. The question was really, is it the right distance into the grotty green in this sort of, oh, that's not a line. Is it the right distance in this direction? And then is it the right distance from the thicket to the left? Now, we don't have a photograph from down here, do we, David?
No, unfortunately.
So, thank you. I did a lot of looking at this, and then an extensive conversation with JK because I was sharing a room with him later. It was clearly the right distance away from the a good enough to close to be right distance away from the stream, which made me feel that it was the right distance into the green. The mapping was a bit funny of this piece of green here, because obviously that's very seasonal vegetation, and whether it was there or whether at certain levels it stretched down to this sort of position, which sometimes made the kite feel a bit too close to the green. Again, it's one of those where in Trello you take all the evidence you've got and then make a decision. And to me, there was more evidence towards it being an alpha. The kite was in the correct place than there was evidence against it. So I chose alpha as the answer. I know that other people had different opinions about that particular problem. I didn't go into the terrain afterwards to see exactly what it was like, but David might have some opinions of that.
It was very brambly at that point. I know Charles went in there as well. I'm a bit. I dispute the issue about whether the dense green is variable from season to season, and I felt that it was fairly accurately mapped as marked on the extract. But this is perhaps the control where I accept that there may be issues with the mapping of that shallow spur, which may have led to other answers.
So this is looking at the kite that is the candidate kite for the answer number 8. And I first looked at this and I thought, the first thing I thought was it was a bit close to here, this distance here, which sort of corresponds roughly, you could imagine, to this bit of the map, if you look at where I've drawn those lines on the map. But in reality, the water's a bit deeper than is mapped, so it's more like this to here. So it brings everything closer together. As I stated earlier, there is the stream that goes behind the kite is here. And when I looked at it on the day, whether it was the lighting or I was tired or whatever, I just couldn't see that stream at all. So I thought, I'm not sure. To me, it looks like it's something that looks a bit like a stream, but the real stream is hidden around the corner, and therefore this is likely to be a zero. But I'm not certain. So I stopped thinking about number 8 for a bit and started thinking about number 9. Now, if you look on the map here, number 9 is on a tree, and there's another tree quite close to it, and that's the sort of problem that's screaming out zero, screaming out that the planner has put the kite on one tree and put the circle around another tree, and you probably can't see the other tree because there's all this grot in between that hides the tree away. Now, as it happens in this competition, the path that we're on here, we carry on round and we walk round here for the next problems. So there's a good opportunity to walk all the way around and have a look at number 9. So I said to myself, I'll go around, have a look at number 9, see exactly which tree it's on. And as I go past, I'll look at number 8. And when I got to this point, looking down the stream, I could see the stream and I could see the kite at the end. So clearly everything I'd thought earlier on was completely wrong. And this was a straight down Bravo kite in exactly the right place, exactly the right time. And you could even see from up here, you could see the stream bending around and fading out. It was completely clear. Walking a bit further onto these steps, you could also see that although the circle was around this kite, this tree, the kite was definitely around this tree. So that became a 0. And then, of course, you have to walk all the way back again to look at the next problem. David.
Well, you could have done 10 and 11 and then gone up to the next one and looked down.
I did do 10 and 11. So shall we move on to number 10, please, Tom? So number 10, early on, before I got to 6, 7 and 8, I stood here and tried to work out what these were. And these were concrete plinths in the ground with bits of rebar sticking out of them. I've no idea what the intention is. Maybe they're going to put some sculptures there later. But once you found them, it was quite easy to identify that there was a kite here that was going to be the answer to number 10. At this point, of course, I didn't know where the number 10's viewing point was, but the number 10's viewing point was down here. I looked down, coming all the way sort of over to here and looking down the path. Do we have a picture of that? That's almost where we're looking now, isn't it? Here's the path. Now, previous one, please. It was much clearer in real life.
Yes, I agree that it's not a very, you can't see the bench, for example, on the photo.
Yeah. The bench is about here, isn't it?
It's about where the Charlie kite is.
Oh, okay, right. Looking down the path in real life, you were sure that the Delta kite was on the right side of the path, and having already identified it as the correct kite, I walked back down the path just to check again, but after that it became quite an easy punch. So I did that. But these Charlie Delta were part of a cluster with number 11, which were Alpha Bravo. I don't like it when this happens, when the Alpha and Bravo are the higher numbered control, because I've made mistakes on those in the past. but not today. So Tom, could we look at number 11, please? I went to the bridge, looked down the centre line of the bridge. The alpha kite was just to the left. It was good enough. The hill was quite clear. Both kites were clearly on the hill. I'm choosing between alpha and bravo. I don't think zero is a possibility here. So and it's on south side, so it's just over the top of the hill. I was quite comfortable with alpha being the correct answer there. That was one of the quicker ones I did. David, what were you wanting?
And that had the highest percentage correct.
Okay. So here we are standing where I'd worked out the correct answer to number 9. These are these steps here. The steps here are the steps here. And we're looking off into some kites. So I try and highlight them. Alpha is just the one left over from problem 9, so we can ignore that because we're looking well down into the terrain. Now, of course, the best place to solve this from was to walk down the path and start looking from about here. And suddenly you're looking at the right angle for these pairs of trees. The Bravo kite is on this lower, well, I'll say lower tree in the picture. And the circle is on the tree behind. Now, even on this blown up picture, that's quite easy to see, but as soon as you walk down the path and you're looking across at them, it became almost trivial to see. Similarly, for the choice between these two trees, who keeps clicking? These two trees. This Charlie is on the tree in front. Is that correct, David?
Yes. Can I say the right hand tree is a monkey puzzle tree, which is actually in that image is hidden behind the large trunk. So
Right.
the Delta kite is visible, but it's on the vegetation rather than on the monkey puzzle tree.
I'm just going to bring up the solutions map on my own screen so I can see what's going on.
Whilst you're doing that, can I just say that for the A course, they were viewing this from the far side, and they also had, as their control 7, they had the same control circle as your 13. From their point of view, they could see the kite, the Charlie kite in this image, but the monkey puzzle tree, which was the correct one, was out of sight from their viewpoint. So that was a 0 for their control 7.
So for us, certainly walking up the path to here, everything was a lot clearer than this photograph from the viewing point. You could see the tree in front, which I think is where the kite was it, David?
The kite was on the vegetation boundary behind, and when you look from the
Yes.
official viewing point,
the Delta kite.
the Delta kite was right in line with the tree it should be on, but on the vegetation boundary behind, which is about 6 meters behind the tree.
Yeah. So some would say that was a tricky problem because without moving from the viewing point, it was very hard to determine where the kites were. On the other hand, simply walking 20, 30 meters down the path and looking at it from another angle, everything became very clear. And that was how I solved those problems. So 14 and 15 was a cluster, alpha to delta cluster, split into 2 parts, with the Charlie and Delta kites being part of problem 14 and the Alpha and Bravo kites being parts of problem 15. So again, the wrong way around for me, which could lead to mistakes, but I was focusing. There were plenty of places to view all of these problems up this path, as I'm drawing there. However, I think in reality, the closest point was the easiest. which I think is roughly where we're standing now. The fence behind wasn't perfectly mapped. And as JK hinted to us earlier, if the fence looks new and not mapped, it could be that the fence is newer than the mapping. But here we're looking at a spur on the edge of this hill. And the question is really, where is the contour, if I'm right with contour, Charles? I think it's about here. So that hinted me at delta being the correct kite. You can't see so clearly on this photograph, but the distance between delta and the vegetation to the side felt about right as well. And I'm only choosing between Charlie and delta. If the contour had gone round at Charlie's height, that hill would have been much too small. And all of that put together gives me delta as the correct answer. David.
Yes, I agree that that's about the right level of the contour. Notice that this hill, the contour to the left of the hill is the same height as the contour for the hill, so it is quite a low level for the contour. So yes, it was the delta into the spur. That was my theory.
There's also a hint of a very minor re-entrance here, which again in 3 dimensions you can begin to see here. Now, whether I'm just wishful thinking at this point, I don't know. But there's the hint of a re-entrant in here, which also hints towards the delta kite being the correct answer. Tom, can we look at 15, please? So looking from the same viewing point, the viewing point down on the path here, we're looking at a kite here and another one over here on a very shallow spur beyond this marshy stuff here. And here's clearly the marsh. Now, you can't be exactly certain that the marsh is where it is on the map, because some of that could be seasonal, some of that could be vegetation growing, but we can see 2 kites beyond the marsh, so we're choosing between those 2. The alpha kite is really just too close to the path. So I'm now going back to, it's not alpha, is it Bravo or is it 0? And again, I had a lot of thought about this one, because the center of the circle is in the white, but the kite itself looked very close to something which might be mapped as green. Now, I know a lot of mappers, and they will have different opinions about what's white and green. But it did take me a bit of time to just convince myself that it was far enough into the white and yet not so close to the green it wasn't green. But then it was getting down to the 4 meter zero tolerance and stuff like that. I did for a little while wonder whether the circle should be slightly further south than the kite to be in the right place, but after a while, and lining up on what green I could see, the edge of the marsh, and even walking up to here and trying to have a look through, I got reasonably convinced that Bravo was the correct kite. David.
Yes, I think it's into the wood, into the white. I didn't fight to get it into the ground at that point. I think from my perspective, it was in the white, but not into the green.
And I think in reality, the center of the circle to the green is less than 1 millimeter, so we're probably only talking 2 meters. And I'm standing 25 meters away. I probably can't claim to judge 2 meters at that distance straight on, so unfair of me to complain too much.
Thank you.
Let's look at number 16, please. It's very hard to see from the photo, but a few things on this that confused. The first is this temporary fence has appeared, which isn't on the map. But every time I looked up, I kept thinking there's a temporary fence there that's not on the map. and it just spun round my head, and I wasn't thinking about solving the problem. I was just thinking about where the fence should be mapped. Once I'd given myself a talking to, um, and I then started looking around this vegetation boundary, and it was clear that the Bravo kite was about here because there were no trees to the right of it. So my Bravo is then removed from the equation, and we're then looking at Alpha. And the question is then, is Alpha in the right place? You could see the trees coming down to the side. You can't see on this photograph at all. There was some evidence of a marsh. The trees came round the front, and you could see them going away from you to the right of the kite. And the distance from the kite to the path, which is about 1 control circle worth, which is 18 meters, felt about right as well. I think maybe at the time I felt it was a little bit far, but I didn't think it was as far as more than a zero tolerance away. So I went for the kite. I hope that was the right answer now.
Yes, you got them all right. Yes. My original viewing point for this was going to be on the far track on the way back. And it was, if anything, clearer from that point rather than from this because you were looking into towards the point of the marsh. But it seemed simpler to have the viewing point this side and make it an earlier control.
There was the opportunity to go all the way round and come up the path here. Is that the right path?
That's the return path.
Yeah. So if you felt like a little run, you could run all the way around and look back. I think JK did that, and he might tell us about it later. But I didn't. I was feeling a bit too lazy. I've just run the footer after all. So now we have some problems in a hillside full of contours, a feature which seems quite rare in British Trailo, because we never seem to get the terrain where we can have a suitable wheelchair track near where there's a hill with lots of contours in it. So some of these reminding me of some Scandinavian problems I've done in the past. Now, 17 and 18 were a pair of problems, all with these 3 kites. Looking at 17 first, it's clear that our choice, that Bravo and Charlie aren't going to be a solution to 17. It's going to be between Alpha and 0. And the question then is it Alpha or is it 0? Now, this, at first thought, the Alpha kite was slightly high, and officially the answer's in a pit, in fact, a wet pit. So part of me is thinking, well, David wouldn't have waded into the middle of a wet pit to put a kite out there. And part of me is thinking, if it was in a wet pit, I wouldn't be able to see so much of the stake underneath the kite. And I could see all the stake underneath that kite. So I'm beginning to think 0 already. There were a few sort of lineups like this one, off the bend in the path there. It's not a perfect lineup. You wouldn't want to stake your life on it, but it can add a bit more evidence to a decision because that lineup pointed well to the left of the kite. I'll tell you now, the kite was here. I think, I don't know if I had a view from here. I came down here for a view, and you could trace the water round, and the water seemed to be hinting towards this sort of pondy thing coming round, hinted towards the kite as well. And at this point, I decided that 17 was 0. And not only did I decide 17 was 0, but I decided the kite was on the spring here, which led me to believe that we're now in a situation where I'm now choosing between Bravo and Charlie because I can anchor those two to where I think Alpha is. Obviously, if I've made a mistake, I'm just compounding them, but fortunately I wasn't. Now, 18 is up a re-entrant. It's very hard to see on the photograph, but there was quite clear evidence of the re-entrant up here. The circle is 2 contours above the path, and you can see the path even on the photograph is clear. So we're looking to go 4 to 5 meters up the hillside. Charlie was significantly further up the hillside than that, so my answer was Bravo. David, any comments?
I would have expected you to have also located the spring from the re-entrant as well as vice versa.
Oh, yes, that's a good trick.
The other thing I'll just add at this point is that the A course had the spring. The control 10 was on the spring, and that was therefore the answer to that was alpha. So they didn't have the water feature. That maybe the control description should have been on the edge or of the pond.
Well, you haven't got any dimensions on it either, so that seems not to happen in Trello.
Yeah.
Tom, can we look at number 19, please? I think this is the problem I stared at for the longest, and I was getting short of time as after this problem. The kites were very distant. The hill, as you can see around here, is very there's no particular features in the hill. Okay, 19 is on a spur, but it's a very, very shallow spur. And from the angle you're looking at it from, it was impossible to see. So I walked back down the path to about here to stare up. You can begin to see the path separates from the fence, and both the path and the fence are going uphill. The fence goes uphill over the contour, levels off and goes downhill again. And that was quite clear by walking up the path. You could see the fence going up the hill, and that gave me something to begin to anchor where these 3 kites were. Now, the answer was Charlie. So I guess Charlie was here and Bravo was here and Alpha was here. Is that about right, David?
Yeah, there is a closer up image, but that doesn't answer your question. But if Tom moves on to the next image.
Yes, it doesn't show the fence, unfortunately, so you can't see. So,
well, answer, and it was, to me, it was on the spur, but yes, they weren't quite that far apart, I'd say.
Okay, the spur was hard to see, I found, but there was a little evidence of a spur. It was behind the fence going up the hill, and after a long thought, I went for Charlie on this one. Probably the control I was least certain of, even less so than number 7.
20, the photos were very poor quality, I'm afraid.
So looking at the map, the thing about number 20 was there was a path by standing here. So we're viewing from about here, and viewing up the path, you can see this hard standing, which becomes a path and goes up the hill to where there's a gate. With a lot of study of this fence, you could see the gap in the fence and you could see the path coming down the hill, and that was exactly where the Bravo kite was. So now I'm deciding it's not Bravo, it's to the left of Bravo, and all I've got is Alpha, which appears to be about 15 meters to the left of Bravo. Now, as the circle goes through Bravo, the correct location is only 9 meters to the left of Bravo. And I sit there thinking, or stand there thinking, has the planner miscounted his meters, or has he set a 0 between an Alpha and a Bravo kite? Now, putting a zero between two kites is a common problem in Trello because you get so focused on the kites that you forget that there can actually be a zero between the two of them. Quite often there's a zero, you'd have a line of three kites and a zero off the end. But it's less usual, although becoming more usual in my experience, to have two kites and the zero between them. And that is exactly what David's done to us here. So having fixed where Bravo is, it's pretty clear that Alpha is too far away, and the answer is the zero between Alpha and Bravo. Nice problem.
I will just say that I did actually measure it. I took a measure up there and did measure the distance and decided they were sufficiently far apart, significantly more than the zero tolerance allowed. So I can't remember if it was 15 meters, but it was getting on towards that.
Yeah. And then we came back to problem 21, please, Tom. So again, a three kite problem, but one of them is just a kite from the previous problem that happens to be in view. So it becomes an Alpha to Charlie, even though here we're only really dealing with Alpha and Charlie, not Bravo. This pile of logs in front of us is not mapped, which can also aid confusion. Now, Alpha looked too close to the path because, again, we're a control circle radius away from the center of the path. That's 9 meters. Even on this picture, it's pretty clear that Alpha's only about 3 or 4 meters from the center of the path. So we're probably not treating Alpha as a problem, as a solution. And it's hard to see from this picture, but Charlie was much too close to us. You could see right up to this bench here, and Charlie was about here, maybe here, but clearly closer to us than the halfway point between the viewing point and the bench. So it wasn't Charlie either. And in reality, the actual problem is about the actual solution's about here, but on the far side of all those logs. Again, with time pressure, maybe a bit nervous because I'm trying to work out things like maybe Alpha is in the right place, maybe the mapping is just a little funny. Clearly not Charlie, but could be Alpha. But eventually I said, no, I'll put zero, and if he claims it's Alpha, I'll argue with him for a long time afterwards.
I will just add that Alpha was a control on the A course. It was their control 12. So they had that decision really, was Alpha in the right place for them, and it was correctly positioned for the A course.
Moving on to 22, please, Tom. Not a lot to say about this one. There were three pairs of knolls going up the path. So this was just a matter of counting going one way, getting to this hill, and then counting back again, working out what was a knoll and what was just a tree stump. And you ended up with this one being a correct answer between the two elongated knolls. I might have argued a little bit about the orientation of the elongation, but I got it right, so I didn't argue about anything.
My original location had been down on the form line hill down to the left, but in discussion with Charles, we decided that we could distinguish between these various different knolls, and so we moved it into the middle one here so as to make it a little bit more complicated.
So viewing point was about here. Was it about here for most of these problems? 23 I solved by doing a line up through the tree and a picnic table, which comes to here. And that lined up directly with the kite, but the circle was to the left of where the kite was. So that made me feel like a zero. There's a bit of confusion about which of the trees is this tree. I think it's this one, isn't it, David?
If you go to the next slide,
Please, Tom.
Tom?
There you go. I'll take off my markings. So the alpha kite is on this tree. No.
The difficulty
No.
here was the kite, the left-hand kite has a tree just to the right of it. Now that tree I've actually mapped as being part of the white. So the tree to the right with a kite on it is actually the first of the green circles next to the end of the earth bank.
Yeah.
So there is some confusion here, but it's not, looking at this map, this image, it's not as clear as I had thought when I was mapping it and standing actually by the tree. So the tree does look separate from the white, but when you go out and stand there, it does sort of meet up with the main bit of the wood. So that tree wasn't marked as an individual tree.
So once you work that out, everything is pointing at the kite not being far enough left. Doesn't really matter where the kite was, but it wasn't far enough left to be the answer to the problem. So the answer was a 0. Let's look at 24, please. Again, here you've got the building, this little building here, which is this one here, obviously. There is this tree, which I think is this tree on the map. Putting all that together, alpha is the right distance between those two features. So the only question then is it far enough back to be at the right point? Is it here or here? Is it on this line? So walking up to the finish and staring at it and walking right back down here and staring at it, it didn't move relative to the background. And it's also set down in the ground, which makes it look like it's on a ditch. That was enough for me, certainly under time pressure, to put it down as an alpha. 25, I only had a minute left when I finished, so I must have had a minute and a half left as I was solving this problem. I went back to traditional navigation and traced around this, which is this here.
Yeah, there is a little tiny sapling in front of the right-hand A kite, which is also marked on the map. I almost didn't map it, but there are the 3 little saplings along the edge of the field.
Those are the 3 saplings, these 3, and there's the bench, which is the X. And those together line up, and you have the alpha kite at the end with a bit of, again, that's not really in the focus, but that's the vegetation to the left of the kite. It was obviously a lot clearer than this photograph when you're standing there looking into the terrain. Shall we have a quick look at the time control?
You can have your 20 seconds on the time control, but I really would like to get a bit more discussion going, please.
I'll stick around a little later if necessary. Time control, the key thing about the time control is there's this re-entrant here is this chunk on the ground here. Thanks, John. If you get that right, then this is a really nice and easy time control. Now, I didn't get it right, so I still not really sure what I was thinking, but the first problem is on the screen now. It's on the left-hand side of the path. It's quite a long way down. It's opposite a little bush. Hence, bravo, quickly answered. We move to the next, please. That's we're in here. It's on the contour coming down the re-entrant. So it's the higher of the 2 kites. The answer should be echo, but for some inexplicable reason, I thought the re-entrant was over here and said Charlie. The only thing that makes me feel better is I wasn't the only person to be that silly. And then the next problem, please, Tom.
I've advanced.
The circle moves back up here, and then you're beginning to think, why on earth did I say Charlie last time? Am I brave enough to say Charlie second? And I did. And that is the correct answer. at this point on a pre-O timed control, because there are no zeros, as soon as the kite's roughly in the right area, you can say the kite letter and you're correct. Different for tempo, but I'll stop there because it's approaching 9:30.